Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, May 15th, 2025. Please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk Stenzel, please call the roll.
Trustee Marshowska?
Here.
Trustee Fitzgerald?
Here.
Trustee Gallegos?
Here.
Trustee Mateo? Here. Manager Francis?
Here.
Attorney Pickrell?
Here.
Also present Clerk Stenzel. Trustee Evans is here this evening. And Trustee Koss will be joining us later.
We do have a quorum, thank you. First on the agenda is the President's report. First, I would like to recognize the, well, let me preface this by saying that 90 degrees outside and storms coming through, the last thing we're thinking about is ice rinks. But something we as a village think about every day is volunteers who contribute to our village. So tonight we are recognizing the Big Chill, represented tonight by Mark Mishkowski. Let me just read my notes here. The Riverside Community Ice Rink, located in the Big Ballpark, and the Big Chill Crew started in 2001. The Big Chill Crew is a volunteer group that assists in the installation of the ice rink liner, filling of the rink, and maintenance of the rink, coordinating with village staff. The village could not provide this amenity to the community without the volunteer assistance. Riverside residents Ralph O'Donnell and Steve Hoke founded the Big Chill Crew, and Bob Thompson manufactured the boards that are used. There have been many members over the years, including original members Kevin Tabor, Jeff Tonkin, Bob Thompson, Mike Foley, and Bill Sherman, for whom the rink was dedicated in 2022. Mark Mishkowski has been a member of the crew since 2005 and has been at the forefront of coordinating the crew every year. Mr. Mishkowski, also known as the Iceman, is present to receive recognition on behalf of himself and the entire Big Chill crew. I'd like to ask Parks and Rec Director Ron Malchiotti and Mark to approach the podium, and I'll let Ron take over.
Thank you, President Pollock. As everyone knows, volunteerism is the cornerstone in Riverside, and as with most of these volunteer efforts, we really couldn't do it without our volunteers. So thank you, Mark Michkowski, for everything that you do for the ice rink, and also all past and present members of the Big Chill crew.
My pleasure.
Yeah, just a small tip.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I just want, say it's a pleasure doing it. I don't even skate. Like, I literally don't know how to skate. So, but it's just something I love doing for the community. There's nothing better than going out there on a weekend and seeing 40, 50 people, young, old, skating. So thanks to the village for supporting us, letting us do it. And I'm probably the only person in town that wants 10 degrees and sub-zero weather all for during the winter. So appreciate it, and we'll keep it going. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Upcoming meetings in the village include May 19th Historical Commission at the Village Hall, May 28th, Planning and Zoning Commission at the Village Hall, June 2nd, Riverside TV Commission at the Village Hall, and June 5th, Village Board meeting at Village Hall. The first of those four all start at 7, Village Board meeting, and I will take this opportunity to announce the fact that we will be changing the starting time of the Village Board meeting to 6:30 p.m. And that'll start with our next meeting, first meeting in June. What is that date? June
5th?
5th, okay. June 5th, the Village Board will start at 6:30, and that's to allow us more time to deliberate and still get home to our families at a decent hour. It also helps our staff be more efficient in their work. And with that, I will turn it over to Manager Francis, or I'm sorry, trustee reports. We've rearranged the agenda a little bit. We moved trustee reports to the beginning so that our trustees can report to the public when most people are engaged in watching and attending the meeting. So I will ask for trustee reports. Go ahead, Aberdeen.
Thank you. I'd just like to talk about the Road to 2050 plan open house. We are going to be celebrating the adoption, the board's adoption of the Road to 2050 plan. It's more than an environmental document that addresses risk from extreme weather and flooding. It really includes strategies that have come from our Riverside residents, including enhancing transportation, ways to grow local business and economic opportunities, reducing social isolation and resident cost burdens, and also to improve community gathering spaces. So we invite everyone to come out and see what the plan is all about. You can bike, walk, or take the train because we're starting at 4 p.m. We'll be there from 4 to 7 on that South train station platform. So come on out and see us next Thursday, May 22nd. Thank you.
Trustee
I
Gallegos.
just want to add on, we had to reschedule the 150th meeting from last Monday. It'll take place next Tuesday on the 20th here at Village Hall, Township Hall. And that also on Monday, Memorial Day Monday, the American Legion will have the Memorial Day service at St. Mary's at 10 a.m. And they will be honoring one of our own residents, veteran Ray Navarro, who served in the Korean War.
Thank you. Any other trustee reports? Trustee Mateo.
So last Saturday was what's known as Global Big Day. It's a worldwide celebration of birds everywhere, especially migrating birds. So thank you, President Pollock, for reading the proclamation 2 weeks ago. We sponsored a bird walk at the Village and Parks and Rec, and we had about 30 people join us, which is the most we've ever had before. We had a guest bird walk leader, Vinod Babu, from the Chicago Ornithological Society, and with his help, we identified 52 different species, most of them migratory. So it was a great day to be in Riverside and be in our green spaces and appreciate all the nature that we have. If you missed out, there's a bird walk this Saturday morning, also at 9 o'clock, starting from the library, as part of the Bio Blitz, where C4, Landscape Advisory Commission, and Olmsted? Different groups are sponsoring this Bio Blitz for us to find all the birds, plants, insects, mammals, anything that we can find that's alive and document it. So join us Saturday at 9.
And the Eagles.
And the eagles.
Thank you, Trustee Mateo, for that report, but also thank you for all your work for Global Big Day. Again, another example of volunteers leading our village. Any other trustee reports this evening? Manager Francis.
Thank you. I have a couple of items to report on this evening. We have Riverside Ripe this weekend, which is Saturday, May 17th. It begins at 7:15 at the Quincy Community Center at 43 East Quincy. Enjoy a bike ride around Riverside with a police escort. This event is for all families and does not require advance registration. We have the Fishing Derby, which is actually going to be rescheduled for Saturday, June 14th. This event is free, but you must pre-register. Visit the village's website for more details. Another event that will be starting prior to our next board meeting is the Historical Commission will have a sidewalk stamp contest. That begins on Sunday, June 1st. And what is a sidewalk stamp contest? So who can find the oldest sidewalk square in Riverside? And it may be you. Old sidewalks throughout the village are stamped with the date in which they were installed. More information to come from Historical about how to submit your sidewalk finds. Stay tuned. Next, it's an update regarding the village not participating in No Mow May. So the Village of Riverside is committed to encouraging sustainable landscaping practices that support pollinators and enhance our local ecosystem. While Riverside will not be observing No Mow May in 2025, residents are encouraged to take part in long-term efforts that promote a healthy environment. Grass should continue to be maintained at a height of 8 inches or less and weeds removed as necessary. In prior years, the awareness program temporarily relaxed lawn maintenance to encourage growth of native species and pollinators. Rather than the temporary measure, the village board has opted instead for ongoing education and support for planting native species that will establish beneficial ecosystems, not just in May, but year-round. So if residents have any questions, they can visit our village website, but we will be enforcing the requirement as it relates to height of grass, weeds, what have you. And so if your grass, weeds, what have you, is beyond 8 inches, you will receive a courtesy tag from the village code enforcement indicating that you need to take care of that. Next, I would like to recognize Mike Collins and congratulate him. He is our village forester, and he has put a lot of effort in with the Morton Arboretum's Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the contributions and dedication of his tree stewardship and planting work program over the past 10 years. Mike recently stepped down from his position as co-chair, but those involved in the Chicago Region Tree Initiative reached out to extend their deep appreciation to the village for supporting Mike's work with this group. And I'd like to read a little bit from the letter that they sent me. Mike has been an exemplary leader, bringing expertise, enthusiasm, and a collaborative spirit to the work group. His efforts in driving discussions, coordinating with partners, and advancing key initiatives have had a profound impact on our shared mission to improve the health, diversity, and sustainability of the urban forest in the Chicago region. We recognize that his ability to contribute so fully is a reflection of your organization's commitment to this important work. Mike's long-term commitment has helped steer the in-demand community tree network events. He recruited many tree care practitioners and experts in adjacent fields into the events, thereby enhancing training, content, quality, and greatly improving our impact. No matter the challenges we face in caring for trees in the built environment, Mike remains a leader and mentor. So I just wanted to recognize Mike for his efforts with them over the past 10 years. And finally, village offices will be closed on Monday, May 26th in observance of Memorial Day. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you, Manager Francis. Next on our agenda is public comments on non-agenda items. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on non-agenda items, now is the time to do that. Please state your name and your business.
Hello, my name is Janabel Chap. I'm a resident and business owner here in Riverside. I am here today with Claudia Reyes, the owner of La Estancia, and Lucio Ambrosio, with the owner of Cubanito. We had been talking about what's going on with same businesses literally being next to each other. So we put together a petition, and I would like to read it. To the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees and Planning Commission, we, the undersigned business owners and residents of the Village of Riverside, respectfully request that the village consider adopting an ordinance to ensure fair business practices and promote a healthy, diverse economic environment. Recently, multiple businesses have faced significant challenges when similar businesses were allowed to open in immediate proximity to one another. And by that, I mean literally next to each other, my door next to the door of the other business, resulting in direct competition that can threaten the viability of longstanding establishments. This practice risks oversaturating specific markets, undermining small business sustainability, and potentially leading to business closures. For example, my business, Next Level Wellness, faced this issue when another wellness business offering overlapping services opened right next door, creating direct competition and making it challenging to sustain growth despite significant financial and personal investments. Similarly, La Estancia, a beloved local Mexican restaurant, now finds itself in the same situation as another Mexican restaurant prepares to open right next door to them. This not only creates an unfair competitive environment, but also risks oversaturating the market, ultimately threatening long-term success of both businesses. Our request is that we kindly urge the Village of Riverside to consider implementing a zoning or business licensing ordinance or a proximity guideline, prevent similar businesses oversaturation, establish a reasonable distance requirement between businesses offering the same primary goods or services, encourage diverse business growth, prioritize zoning that promotes a varied mix of businesses to enhance the village's appeal to residents and visitors, protect small business investments, recognize and support the significant financial and personal investments small business owners are making to residents and visitors. Why this matters: this ordinance would not only protect existing businesses, but also foster a more vibrant and economically diverse community, ultimately benefiting all Riverside residents. And I have for you the original petition. A lot of businesses signed. The Metal Mites is one of them, Jeff's Auto, Starbucks. I know that Starbucks technically doesn't fall in worrying about that because of state laws. But when they heard what we were going through, they were very supportive. So I would like to provide the board with the originals of the signatures that we gathered. Who would
If you
I?
could give those to Clerk Stenzel for our files.
And again, we are not saying that we're not welcoming businesses. All we're asking is for you guys to kindly please think of some type of proximity guidelines so that other businesses are not in this same situation. And then now I don't know if the other owners would like to speak, but I will.
Thank you. Are there others who want to speak on this topic? Before you do so, though, I would like, so I think it's important that you understand our authority as a village, what we can and cannot do. So I'd ask Attorney Pickrell to kind of address our ability to do what you're asking.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I mean, first, I understand what you're saying, and I sympathize with your situation. Our authority comes from the Illinois Municipal Code, and it provides a very specific set of matters that we can regulate and matters that we cannot regulate. You know, for example, you correctly identified that we can regulate zoning, but zoning, generally speaking, allows us to list a series of uses that can occur in a particular given area called the zoning district. And so we can say, yes, in this one district, we will allow restaurants, for example, or another district might be other types of businesses, another district might be residential. But we lack the authority to regulate competition amongst businesses within that district. We don't have the authority to say, yes, we'll allow restaurants, but we're only going to allow French restaurants or Mexican restaurants or any other type of restaurant. We don't make the inquiry as to whether or not the business aspect of it and internal competition amongst businesses, we simply lack the authority to regulate that. I will certainly read your petition and give it more thought than I've given it in the few moments I've had just now. But I just want you to understand that our ability to regulate in this area is severely constrained.
And I understand that, so I would like some feedback when you have more time to review
Sure.
it.
I haven't read this yet, so
Yeah.
allow me to read this and I can have a
Yeah,
more fulsome
absolutely,
response.
whether it's with an email or another meeting with the business owners, so that you can see the owners that are on there, that everybody's concerned about what's going on.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And does anyone else want to speak on this topic?
I want to apologize the way I'm dressed. I didn't know it was so fancy. I'm Sam from San Juan Bones.
Can you go to the
You have to
podium?
speak at the podium.
Well, okay.
Get you on the record.
Again, I apologize for the way I'm dressed. I walk dogs all day. Okay, so just, yes, on the matter, I just learned some new things about it. I believe that it's a Kafka building, and it's more or less probably up to him to, who he rents to, he can rent to, which is, I live there. I have a beautiful apartment there, believe it or not. And I just feel that, I mean, it shouldn't, I think there's enough to go around for everyone. I truly believe that, whether it's 5 Mexican restaurants in a row. I just feel that she already has two others going. And maybe zoning, I get it, it's a residential, and then restaurants, and then, your health, whatever I'm sorry, what do you do? Wellness. That's probably the wellness district, like athletic goes over there and stuff like that, right, in your area? Oh, okay, well, I'm not very well informed. I just came to try to support La Estancia because they're wonderful food, and directly next door, the patios would be like right up next to each other. But I wasn't aware of the rules or anything like that, so I've been actually learning today, which I always love something new. So anyways, that's it. I love Riverside. I'm San Juan Spons. If anybody needs their dogs trained, I'm your girl. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Lucy. I'm the owner of Cuento Express, and my concern is about the street vendors more than anything. Was the regulations on street vendors, because I have a taco truck that's parked like down the street, 2-3 blocks away from my business. It's between mine and El Faro restaurant. It's a taco truck. They park there 4 days a week. So I don't know if you can, like once in a while, it's like once a week, or I don't know if we can regulate that.
The location of where food is served is something that's within our authority to regulate.
Pardon me?
The location of where food is served is within our authority to regulate. So we can regulate taco trucks, yes.
So because it's 4 days a week, it's taking business, from El Faro and from my place. So I don't know if he has the proper documentation to be parked there. I don't know, the permits. So, I don't know who can answer that, or.
We'll be discussing food trucks later on in this agenda, but whatever you want to say, now's the time to,
That's
or
all
you
I
can
want
wait
to say.
around and comment when we are talking about the food trucks.
Thank
Either
you.
way. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, como ustedes saben, yo no hablo español, no hablo inglés, pero Cristian es mi hijo y me va a interpretar.
So this is my mother, and I'm gonna be translating because she don't speak any English, so I'm gonna do the best I can.
Yo quiero decirles que estoy muy agradecida con todos y cada uno de ustedes por
I wanna
habernos
say
dado la
I'm very
oportunidad.
thankful with you guys for giving us the opportunity to be here.
Y en realidad no estamos en desacuerdo que se abran nuevos comercios, porque he sido parte de las cámaras de comercio y en realidad se necesita un comercio para que haya más diversidad en un town. Y nosotros lo único que estamos proponiendo es que no haya el mismo comercio de un lado a otro.
And
De hecho,
we're not against opening up new businesses in the area. As a matter of fact, she's part of the chamber, and then she likes new businesses to come into the town, but she would like to you guys for consider to opening up the same similar businesses right next to each other. If there's something that could be done about it, because a lot of businesses are going through this situation, and that's why we gather signatures, because there's a lot of businesses and also residents that are not okay with what's going on with the town, the new businesses that are opening up. So that's what she wants to see if you guys can consider doing or taking them to look at this matter.
de hecho, yo tuve la oportunidad de abrir los otros lugares, no lo hice porque considero y creo que todos tenemos derecho a la diversidad.
She had the opportunity to open right next to her before the other person was offered the business, but she didn't do it because she feels like there's other people that also deserve the same opportunity, and it wouldn't be logical for her to open right next to her own business. That's why she didn't even consider getting it.
De hecho, cuando yo llegué aquí estaba Molly's, nunca tuvimos ningún inconveniente porque era una comida diferente. Posteriormente,
When she got there at first, it was right next to her, there was Molly's, and then they never had any problem, any inconvenience at all, because it was actually different type of food, it's not the same, so everything was fine.
posteriormente se puso Soundtracks, ¿cómo se llama?
And then after that, Samtrap came in,
Y de hecho tampoco tuvimos ningún problema. Yo de hecho fui a enseñarles cómo hicieran su negocio porque tenían una buena posibilidad de tener un buen negocio ahí.
and also when Samtrap opened up, she never had an issue. She actually tried to help them out, to tell them the stuff they could do because we've been there for a while, so maybe they could stay there also, and she tried to help them out as best as she could because it's not even the same type of food that she serves in her restaurant.
Y en realidad yo no estoy en desacuerdo que se abran nuevos negocios, pero sí entiendo que es buena la competencia, pero no de esa magnitud, de esa manera.
And she's not against new businesses opening up again, and then she feels like competitive is fine, but it shouldn't be like that.
Ya tenemos demasiados negocios de comida mexicanos, por decirlo así, y todos estamos de acuerdo porque estamos de una distancia a otra, ¿sí? Trabajamos en conjunto porque estamos de una distancia a
We
otra.
already have a lot of Mexican restaurants with businesses in the area, and then everybody's been okay because they're within a certain distance of each other. But then now being literally right next to each other, then that's where little issues will come either with the new business that's coming in and also with us. And not just us, all other businesses that are going through the same issue.
Y espero ustedes consideren esta propuesta porque sería más conveniente, bueno, consideramos nosotros, tal vez ustedes piensen porque yo soy parte de la situación, pero yo considero que sería como algo favorable para todos los comerciantes que estamos aquí y no se quede empty, o como se dice, vacío, como cuando yo llegué, todo el town estaba, la mayoría estaba vacío.
So maybe if you guys could please consider it and maybe doing something about it because we wouldn't want to guide this to the same how the town was before, like 10 years ago when there was a lot of businesses that were empty, and now by you guys are allowing to compete literally right next to each other, sooner or later one's gonna give up and then it's gonna be right back to an empty business instead of having a business stay there for a long time, and we could bring new businesses into the area, but something different would be good for everybody.
Y ustedes recuerdan que esa esquina por mucho tiempo estuvo vacía. Entonces ahora, pues gracias al trabajo de todos nosotros y todos ustedes por apoyarnos, pues es como se ha ido comercializando. Entonces queremos que siga creciendo el town de Riverside porque somos
And as she
parte
said,
del town.
the corner where she's at was empty before for a very long time, and now that it's staying open, now new businesses are opening up, thanks to you guys and thanks for us to doing it all the work, and she wants to thank everybody for
And we thank you, and we
allowing us to stay
appreciate,
there for a long
we
time.
appreciate your business being in town. This may be an issue of translation, but as Attorney Pickrell said, we do not have the authority to tell a Mexican restaurant they can't go into the sand trap location. We simply do not have that legal authority.
Bueno, no es que se considere o que creamos que sea como denegar, sino también en tener en consideración el trabajo de muchos de nosotros que hemos estado por mucho tiempo aquí. Y no queremos que usted niegue, ustedes
Not
nieguen.
denying everybody, but just by like you guys maybe considering the very hard work that we've done in that place for a long time, and then now it's really gonna affect not only us, but also businesses.
I apologize, but I'm gonna put an end to this because we've covered it. We do not have the authority, we do not have the ability, the legal authority to do what you're asking us to do, period. We will support all businesses, and we do support all businesses in this village. We're active, the chamber is here. I appreciate you being involved in the chamber. But when it comes to regulating the free market, we do not have the authority to do that. We have authority to regulate public safety and welfare and related matters, but we simply cannot say you can only have one Mexican restaurant in our downtown. That's not our authority. So thank you for being here, and thank you for attending. Anything, as I said, we support our businesses. I feel very strongly that we do a good job doing that. And we hope you can outcompete any restaurant that comes in to compete with you.
Sí, yo entiendo su situación y
We're
muchas
going
gracias.
to stop there because we've covered this. I appreciate it, but we have
Thank
business
you.
to take care of. So thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Any other public comments on any other topics this evening? Wait, hold on one second, Eric. I want to say one last thing on that. some people watching from home may be confused because later on we're talking about food trucks. And some may look at that and say, well, wait a minute, President Pollock, you're regulating food trucks. They sell food. You're saying that they can't be so far from another restaurant. That is a different thing, because a food truck is a mobile structure that moves around. It's not a bricks and mortar building. And so that food truck has different impacts. If it were selling gadgets, just product, we'd have the same concern, because the food truck can move in and sell without the overhead that a bricks and mortar store can sell. And the fact that it's a mobile truck has a public impact that's different, public safety impact that's different from regulating bricks and mortar businesses. So I want to be clear about that. So anyway.
And I would only add, that's correct, and we will regulate food trucks as a means of delivering food, but within that category, we're not regulating, are there going to be Mexican food trucks or French style or other style? We don't regulate the cuisine being served. We regulate the service of food generally. So.
Thank you. Any other public comment on other topics tonight? Yes, Mr. Sundstrom, thank you.
Hi, Eric Sundstrom, 33 East Quincy, Unit C. Been living in town here for 68 years. I'm also on the Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the Lions Club president. And tonight I am announcing our Person of the Year award, and it is for Aberdeen Marsh Aga. And she has donated so much time and donated so many things that help this village that she is well earned this award, which, Alex, is it happening in August?
That's what's entailed celebration, yes.
Yes,
August
okay.
8th and 9th.
So, kudos to you, Person of the Year. Thank you.
This is an incredible honor, and I know that you know that I do what I do because I love this village. I love every aspect of it, and I don't mind, and in fact, I relish each new project that comes along. And I just, I'm not usually a person that likes a lot of attention paid to me, so I'm probably blushing right now. But anyway, I thank you deeply, and I will keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll do it together, and it's going to be great. So thank you again.
And I want to point out that, Aberdeen has been very busy this year with the Riverside 150 Committee, as well as the C4 Committee. But she has always been involved in this village. She could have won this award many, many times over the years. Historic Preservation Commission, Olmsted Society, and I'm sure Oak Park Visitors Bureau, right? I'm sure there are others that I'm forgetting about and others I don't even know about. But Aberdeen has been, she has represented this village very well throughout the years and continues to do so. So an honor well deserved, Aberdeen. Thank you. Any other public comments this evening? If not, we'll move on in our agenda to the consent agenda. Clerk Stenzel, please call or read the consent agenda.
Approved voucher list of bills, May 15th, 2025. Approved Village Board of Trustees Synod Dine meeting, May 1st, 2025. Approved Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, May 1st, 2025. Review and file board and commission minutes. Parks and Recreation regular meeting minutes, March 31st, 2025. Review and file department monthly reports. Community Development Department, April 2025. An ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year commencing January 1, 2024 and ending December 31st, 2024 for various additional expenditures and revenues. A resolution approving an employment agreement, Village Manager Jessica Francis. An ordinance amending Section 7-1-5, obstructing sewers and public rights-of-way of Chapter 1, Health Regulations, in Title 7, Health and Sanitation Regulations of the Village Code of the Village of Riverside relative to regulation of grease traps, and an ordinance approving a settlement agreement.
Do any of these items need to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk Stenzel, please call the roll.
Trustee Marshaga? Aye. Trustee Fitzgerald? Aye. Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Motion is approved, consent agenda is approved. We have no department, board, or commission reports. Move on to pending business. First item in pending business is Village Facilities Planning Update and Discussion presented by Williams Architects. You want to introduce?
Sure.
Andy?
This evening, Andy Dogan from Williams Architects will provide an overview of option D, which back in November, the board had selected that as the option for the facility, which focused on public safety and also had public space. And so since then, he has been working with a contractor to evaluate our cost estimate, and he'll walk you through those additional pieces, in addition to obtaining consensus on a couple of items for our path forward. And then I will then provide an overview on some of the financial options too, as we get further direction.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. President Pollack, Trustees, Manager Francis. Again, I'm Andy Dogan, Managing Principal with Williams Architects, and I wanted to provide an update to what our team last presented in November with respect to future directions for public safety and community space here next to Township Hall. So just very briefly, I wanted to highlight some of the things that we've been working on behind the scenes. Since that last presentation, we've been working with a construction management firm to really understand more specifics with respect to cost and constructability of the project. This is a complicated facility on a challenging site right next to a very active river. So the more information we can possibly get with respect to what that means, what complexities there may be, what needs to happen in terms of constructing the project from a phasing and safety standpoint, the more accurate we can estimate or predict costs for the project at this point. As it says, that all this information allows us to give you a more reliable cost estimate rather than these rather wide ranges that we've been providing before. Having said all that, I want to emphasize that this is still a planning process. A planning process is intended solely to test fit various solutions, evaluate them on their own merits without getting into specifics of design, and talk about pros and cons and provide very preliminary budgeting. So although we have more confidence in costs because we have contractor input, all of us want to emphasize that this is still very early in the process. If it were a football game and we were on offense, we're at the 10-yard line and we've got to go all the way down the field. With respect to understanding the project. And the project and the budget would continue to be refined into more meaningful and specific floor plans and exterior options and renderings with materials and colors should the village decide to move forward with exploring this project. Next. Fantastic. Okay.
Maybe he doesn't want to work with us. I'll be your clicker.
Okay. So what I wanted to do, since it's been some time, is to just recap quickly the option D that we discussed last time with you. The overall solution is a standalone building that would take the place of the public safety addition to this building and the buildings in the back of the site, which would be removed. So a single structure. The lower level that would essentially be at a basement level would have parking spaces, mechanical and storage spaces, stairs and elevators, and some components of the police program. Next slide. The main level of the facility would have both an entrance and a lobby that would open to administration and service windows for both police and fire. There would be support spaces like restrooms and a break room for police and fire on that level, as well as police communications. But the main portion, as shown in that light red color, is a fire apparatus bay that is set back from the street to allow for safety of those apparatus coming out of the bays, and then support on either side of the bay. And then next, we have the upper level of the facility, which would involve, again, some more police space, some more space to support the fire department, and then some community spaces. We're looking at a fitness center that could be shared between staff and potentially village residents, a community room, space for Riverside TV, a space for a community program or catering kitchen, as well as a roof terrace, an outdoor space that would overlook the river. So that's the overall, what I would call the program or the plan. Obviously, much more detail would be explored as we get further into this process, but from a planning standpoint, that describes the plan or the overall concept of the project. Can I answer any questions before I move on? I know this is review from some, but I do want to make sure I'm answering everything I can.
Could you just clarify the reason that on the upper level, the area over the apparatus is open to below? What is the purpose of that?
The apparatus bay needs to be a taller space than the rest of the facility. Okay. So what we're doing is basically pushing this upper level of the facility to the back and to the sides so that apparatus bay can be taller to allow those trucks to come in and out.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, good question.
I have one more question,
Yes.
and that is, you know, I believe at a couple of our prior discussions about this, we had talked about the some visioning sessions that had been done years ago where there was a path over by the library that would be extended toward the swinging bridge that would become kind of a feature, and that it might be desirable to have the new building sort of open from that area, you know, to have a pedestrian entrance or patio, you know, on that side, but I'm seeing the only entrance on the street-facing side.
If we could go back one slide to the main level, Emily, thank you. One of the things that we have done here, let's see if I can get the pointer. In anticipation of that, we aren't showing a path that definitely requires more study, but one thing we could potentially look at is a secondary entrance so that we're able to connect this back or river-facing side of the facility with the front so it can be accessed. Again, I'd like to emphasize this is really early. If there's a way to make that happen in a sensible way, I'd love it to be more than just a hallway. You know, if there's a way to design the facility so that that lobby perhaps cuts all the way through and is a meaningful entrance from both sides, I think that would be wonderful architecturally. That's one of those things that I think would be part of a next phase of design. Having said that, if we devote more space to that, it either increases the size of the project or comes at the expense of something else. So certainly something we can explore. I did want to point out that we had started to think about that and how that could potentially happen.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on this at this point? Thanks.
Let's see. Well, looks like it might be working now. Let's see. Okay. Moving on from the plans, I wanted to present as a recap, the budget for this project that we had presented back in November to give you some comparison. As I've mentioned before, we think it's very important to give the village a picture of the overall budget for the project. So not just the construction cost, but everything it really takes to put a facility together. So in addition to what we would call site construction and building construction,
we would have the costs of contracting the project or construction management. That's that general conditions, insurance, overhead, and profit. To that, we would add escalation and contingencies, knowing, first of all, that this project would need actually be constructed likely at least a couple years into the future. So adding 2 years of escalation at 4% per year, plus a contingency to account for unknowns that may happen during construction. Again, a complicated project on a complicated site, that's just prudent budgeting. And then soft costs refer to everything else. So architectural and engineering fees, furniture that you would need for the facility, equipment that is not permanently installed in the facility. Surveys, soil borings, construction testing, all of those different things are under that soft cost. So this particular plan was projected at roughly between just under $26 million and $28.6 million. As I mentioned, we've had this looked at a bit more closely because we want to make sure the estimates we're providing are accurate and are neither too high nor too low. And what we're finding here is that the initial estimates from our team may have been a bit conservative, and we have a new updated project budget. So you see many of the same categories. It's been broken out into site construction and general requirements like fencing to secure the site during construction and that sort of thing, building construction, the costs for construction management and supervision of the project, and those same escalation and contingencies and soft costs. And I have a little disclaimer in this slide showing that the contingency is 10% and the 8% escalation is for 2 years of escalation to mid-2027. So if the project starts later than that, that's something that we would have to take into consideration. I always tell my clients if I could predict construction escalation several years into the future, I wouldn't need to have my architect job because I could use that knowledge in another way. But I just do want to point that out. And I have a note there saying what those soft costs include. So this current budget that had constructor input is coming in at just under $22,800,000 for the whole project, which is a positive direction from what was presented before. So Manager Francis asked me to also talk tonight, in addition to reviewing those updates, where you would go from here, what potentially comes next with this. Again, as I mentioned, our scope of services with the village at this point has been limited to exploring these options at a planning level. Several months back, we started exploring multiple options to address community space, public safety space. Then we took a little bit of a detour into looking at a gym as part of the facility, and then came back to that concept D, which consolidated the program into a more compact standalone building. So any future design exploration, unless there are other things you would like us to explore from a planning standpoint, would be part of future services by a professional. Normally at this point, what we see our municipal clients do is to say we would like to continue exploring a project at a certain budget with a certain scope. So for example, you could say we would like to continue exploring concept D, understanding that things are going to develop further and change in response to your questions and community input. And you would set a budget of a certain amount, and I understand Manager Francis will talk to you about that. If you decide to do that and you decide to contract with us or another firm, hopefully us, to keep moving, we would continue to work on more details of the floor plan. Certainly several options for the exterior appearance of the facility. That's going to be very important, and continued refinement of the budget. And we would even recommend starting to get some soil borings, a survey of the site, so we really can dive in and make sure we really understand the conditions that will affect the design of this facility. We understand that this is an endeavor that would very likely require bonding approval from your voters. And in that situation, you have timelines based on elections from which we need to move backwards, correct, to arrive at a schedule. So if you decided that this was a project you wanted to put forward to the community on the November 2026 ballot, a decision would need to come from the village to place such a question before the voters in August of that year. And the information we believe you would need to provide your community with that, and the process by which we would think that would make sense is as follows. I've summarized on this slide. If you were to approve continuing to move forward, we would want to continue working on more detail in terms of the site and the floor plan. Really, instead of these diagrams, we'd start to get into floor plans with walls and doors and windows and really start to explore how this works in more detail. After we get to a workable plan, we like to look at various exterior design alternatives. Throughout this process, by the way, we're coming back to you and giving you our updates and getting your feedback. And I think what we would be targeting, in addition to more concrete budget information, would be after that process to come back to the village board, give a formal presentation of these different alternatives to see what you think and if there is a preferred alternative that you have on your mind. Sometimes what our clients like to do when there is a process like this, we like to advocate for as much community engagement and open exchange and sharing of information with your residents as you possibly can. So what we are proposing in this schedule and this process is not only time for you as the village board to react to and decide the way forward, but also opportunities for the public to learn about the plans, to make suggestions, and engage us with some feedback so that if there are real concerns about particular aspects of this project, whether it's the aesthetics or the cost or whatever it might be, that we have an opportunity together to address those. So in this process, we're suggesting that we take those initial options and put them before the public. We can certainly help facilitate open houses where we present the proposal to the public, answer any questions anyone may have. We're doing this exact same process right now next door for the village of Brookfield and studying a new community recreation center. We've had several community engagement events, and we've also created some online surveys to help that village board understand where the community is at with respect to that facility. After you get that feedback, we would tabulate that, provide you with that information so that you would say, this is a site plan, a floor plan, and an exterior direction based on that feedback that you're comfortable developing a little bit further. We would continue to develop that in the late winter and early spring. And we'd want to continue that feedback loop. Now that we say, community, we've heard you. We understand these are your preferences and your concerns. Here is the refined design that shows more information and hopefully addresses some of those concerns and those preferences that you've stated before. So we think a really ideal time to do that might be next May or June. One of the things we really love to do is to be able to meet people where they are in the community to help build engagement and knowledge around the project. And your festivals, your arts weekend, I understand that's normally in June. Those are great events to be able to do that, to set up a booth, let people know what's happening with the project. So after that engagement, we would make final tweaks to the concept based on what we hear. And that would include, at that point, we'd be getting into some very detailed and photorealistic exterior and interior renderings. We want everybody to understand what this proposal really is. And we would want that to be able to deliver that all to you on or before your meeting in August, at which you'd have a decision before you to put a proposal on the ballot. I've provided an estimated budget for these services. I want to emphasize that $250,000 is not just Williams Architects. We are recommending that you would get surveys and soil borings as part of this next phase to have more clarity on the site conditions. We also think it's prudent to start some preliminary engineering on the project beyond just architectural design. Again, this is a complicated building. We need to understand the structural systems. We need to understand mechanical, electrical, plumbing, where we're getting utilities from, how this is all going to work so that the proposal, if you so decide, has an accurate budget, and there are no more surprises than we would normally see in a construction project. Manager Francis also just asked me to speak a little bit about our firm's particular experience in these processes. I mentioned Brookfield. We are doing community engagement around a new community center right now. We've supported many of our clients, not only in the municipal realm, but in the library and recreation worlds. We do this by doing exactly the same things that we talked about, right? Making sure that we have really good, clear graphics, renderings that really show the true character of the project, and that we're really listening to the community through this intentional community engagement processes. So you have those in-person experiences, you go where people are to engage with them. You have online components for people who can't make in-person events. And I think it's important in this process to make sure everybody feels like they're being heard and their opinions, their feelings are being valued. It's impossible to please everybody in the design of one building. But the more we can listen, the more we can tease certain themes and concerns about, bring those to you, talk about them, and refine the design accordingly. Our experience, especially when you're asking for the public's money, is that you want to show that you're listening and you want your design to respond to community concerns. So we really want that to be part of the process. So that is really the update for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything else about that. But thank you for having me tonight, and look forward to more discussion.
Thank you. Manager Francis, anything to add?
So relative to some of the questions that we need direction on to kind of go to that next step is the proposed budget. Is the board comfortable with what has been proposed, just because then that creates rails for what then ultimately we're engaging Williams in further to create? So that's the first question. And I can certainly go, so when we talk about budget, Emily, if you can go to the next slide. So I did request from our financial advisor to provide us what a 20-year bond issuance would be for 15, 20, and 25 million. And so then they break it down with regard to the financial impact based on the market value of homes, whether it's 100,000 all the way up to 800,000. So it shows the annual impact and then the monthly impact. One item of consideration, while I recognize that the facility is what is being projected currently is below 25 million, there are other pieces of public needs that the village has received a lot of feedback in within the past several months as it relates to parks and recreation and parks. And so whether or not that would be a consideration for the board of doing a referendum question that would incorporate both the public safety facility and parks and recreation facility / parks enhancements. Once again, I do not draft these particular referendum questions. However, we have very skilled counsel that can incorporate these pieces if this is something that the board would be interested in. And then it affords, if approved, it then affords the maximum ability and flexibility for if the budget comes in under, to then reallocate those to different park enhancements. Now, mind you that what has been outline does not include that connector path that Trustee Marsh Osga had mentioned. And so if the budget were to come in under, once again, if the question is relative to recreation facilities, recreation structures, then that can be an acceptable expense for that particular bond issuance. And so when you're looking at how to package this, and that would be the reason for looking at doing the 25 million. And so it's broken down monthly on the financial impact, but really letting us know whether or not this is, one, does the board want to do a referendum for facility? If they don't, then we pause as to what our next steps are. Because realistically, accumulating $20 million for a facility, well, we've done a pretty good job of, maximizing where the dollar goes. I can't come up with that. I'm very talented, but that's not something I'm able to do. And looking at what it breaks down to. Also, keeping in mind, I would personally say you would probably want to wait for the April 2027 election to allow for maximum time of public input, because these types of items with facility and also referendum take time. We did a referendum question not that long ago, and that was a complicated question, right? This one will be a little bit more straightforward, but still getting the feedback on the facility that the community wants and or other pieces as it relates to this type of referendum question is going to be key. And so, limiting yourself to having it on the November election ballot in 26 versus having it in April of 27, those additional months provide a lot more time for public education and engagement with the community.
And response by the designers to the concerns that they have.
Right.
Great point.
I mean, part of the things that I would envision with working with Williams is, there would be significant open houses, public engagement, as Andy said, having multiple renderings that would first be ultimately presented to the village board. And if the village board said, yes, we have 3 different renderings that we all are in agreement on, and then bringing it to the public to get their feedback and their feelings on it, because this is a hefty investment in the village and has far-reaching implications, positive implications for the village as well. The value of having an enhanced facility for the public has an inherent, implications on property values. And so recognizing those different pieces. And so once again, for staff, if the board were to do a referendum, our role, our consultant's role is to educate and never advocate. But it's a lot of education that we would have to do over that period of time.
Thank you, Manager Francis. And this chart, I don't imagine anyone in this room can read that. I certainly can't.
Sorry.
That's okay. You needed to provide the data. So I just wanted to give you a few examples. This chart on the screen shows the property tax impact for various priced houses in the village at the 25 million mark, 20 million mark, and $15 million mark. So, for example, and I'm reading this off my screen here, if we had a referendum for $25 million, which would cover the cost, the annual impact on a house valued at $300,000 would be just under $380 a year. The impact on a house valued at $500,000, and that's for a 20-year period. The impact on a house valued at $500,000 would be just over $660 per year. So just gives you an idea. Obviously, if your house is worth less, that it's gonna be less. If it's worth more, it's gonna be more. But this table outlines that, and then, and obviously, if we do 20 million or 15 million, that number goes down. That gives you a point of reference for what this means for individual homeowners, property taxpayers in the village. With that, I think what we're looking for is direction. Really, the bottom line is whether to proceed with a contract with Williams Architects to proceed with this work. Contract is estimated at $250,000, and it would come back to the board for approval before we spend any money. But we want to get your input before and see if you are ready to take that next step.
You want for a consensus or for a vote?
I think a consensus is enough if people are in general agreement.
Thank President Pollock, if I may, I have not prepared a formal proposal that is
Right.
actionable yet.
No, I understand. I'm sorry if I didn't say that right.
Move forward with
Yeah.
meeting with them.
If the board is in agreement, staff would begin working with Williams Architects on preparing a formal quote, knowing that the approximate cost is $250,000. Is that
That's fair.
fair? So,
I'm in favor of it,
trustees,
if that's what you're asking, then yes.
Yes.
In favor of it.
seems like everyone wants to move forward. Any questions or comments at this point in time?
Mr. Dogan, can you just clarify that the estimated project costs include all demolition, correct?
Yes, yes. If I go back to that particular slide, I'll show you exactly where it is. Our construction manager, Harbor Contractors, who assisted us with this, actually had a demolition contractor out to the site to take a look at what it would take to take those buildings down, because again, it's not an easy process. And those, I don't recall the specific demolition number, but
It's included.
Yeah, it is included.
Thank you.
It's part of that site construction and general requirements.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other trustees have any comment? Any public comments on this? So we have direction to proceed to staff. I do want to reiterate, as you've heard us talk about before, our current facilities for public safety are woefully inadequate. And our men and women in our police and fire departments do a tremendous job without the facilities that they need. And this is a critical project for this village moving forward. So I appreciate the support from the board and look forward to more work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Next item on the agenda, we move on to continued discussion relating to food trucks and mobile vending. Assistant Manager Monroe.
All right. Well, good evening. So this is, as you said, a continuation of our discussion on food trucks, regulation of food trucks specifically. At the last board meeting in April, the general discussion asked staff to come back with some examples of where food trucks could be parked. There was an indication generally that the regulations around food trucks should be split into two categories. So incorporation, or more specifically, just clarification as to how they fit into our existing special events process, as well as a specific type of business licensure and the regulations and qualifications for food trucks to operate as, you know, with essentially an unlimited opportunity within regulation to operate. So they could operate more than at a special event. They could operate several days a week, nearly every day of the week if we choose, within certain parameters. So we also used the feedback from the restaurants as well as from the board to craft what we put into the agenda items. So I don't know if this is going to work here, but I can continue on for a moment. So what we need to know this evening, or what we're aiming for, is whether the board would generally like to accept our approach or staff's recommendation to special events. I'll just outline it briefly. We also want to know if the recommendations for parking of food trucks in the B1 zoning districts, certain B1 zoning districts, and street parking would be acceptable, as well as the proposed distances as we indicated. I'll refresh just for the general public that didn't see the memo. What we're asking for is to incorporate a $30 fee that applies to food trucks specifically within our special events process. Currently, the events application is open to anyone, so residents, community organizations, the village completes these as well. The farmers market uses it to set up their events for the year. And so currently the application cost is $10, and then each incremental element of that special event, there's a fee associated with that. So if we need public works or public safety or other village resources, we charge for those as indicated by the event's needs. So in this regard, it would just apply the $30 fee if they were going to use a food truck, okay? The outline of where you can do this, anyone who is running a special event would want this if they have a food truck to do the application. This would be allowed in residential zones. The only time that food trucks for general public consumption and use in our residential zones and areas would be with a special event application. We do have a temporary food license application that you can complete if you don't have a special event application, but very often they're in combination. Residents who would want to use a food truck, I'll offer some clarification here. Residents that would want to use a food truck for a special event of their own that is a private event could be, they don't have to fill out an application, right? They could park it on their private property to allow private catering for their private party. If the truck, for whatever reason, could not park in a driveway, it would have to park legally on the correct parking side of the street, right? Whether the home is located on the side of the street with the parking or not, we would want to see them parked legally with the customer side, the open service window to that grass side of the street, right? We don't want customers or anybody using a truck, even temporarily, where they're on the street side where vehicles can come through. We would enforce this, just as we do for other regular parking. We don't see this commonly. There have been, I think, 2 requests since I've been here the last several years for a circumstance where they may not be able to park in a driveway. We certainly can also use the option of using a temporary right-of-way permit. We also have that as an option, and that just is another layer of awareness for public safety, public works. We make sure that from sight lines and visibility and all of those things are a factor. We could use that if it's impossible for them to park on their private property. So the bottom line is that we don't feel like it's necessary to regulate additional things within the special event process. Do you have questions about the special event element of food trucks or that? No, that's the easier one. Okay.
I don't have a question, but just a comment.
Yes.
Assuming we go to an ordinance at some point, I think the regulations for street parking of a food truck need to be fleshed out quite a bit, just to make
Yes.
sure, as you said, that public safety in the streets is protected.
Absolutely. So there are things that go into it, and like I said, it's been a rare occurrence. The person that had come in and asked, knowing we were discussing this very issue, said, I'm having something for a couple of hours upcoming. We'll try to park it in the driveway, but if we can't, where can we park it and for how long? And so they were trying to get ahead of it. We'll try to do some education as well, but we certainly can tighten up the regulations. And so preempting a couple of other questions that may be related to the topic. This is presenting a proposed zone for 10 private parking lots, 3 locations on stretches of Harlem Avenue, parking on the street. We did not, we purposely did not propose parking in downtown, so we have a B2 zoning district for a variety of reasons, okay? One is based on the feedback from the board and prior comments, but street parking is already limited in our downtown district, and so if we were to allow a business licensed food truck, so we're talking about somebody who can operate as they choose, it would be really difficult to accommodate without displacing other users of the street, conflicting with existing parking needs, or also encountering some of these separation distances that we're also talking about implementing. Licenses for food trucks include this unlimited duration, so they could be there as often as parking is available, and it makes careful site selection really critical, because we were just talking about public safety and parking and other elements here. We already have a concentration also of brick and mortar restaurants, so it's really challenging to find a meaningful separation distance without eliminating most of the locations downtown. That was kind of the feedback we got from the board at the last meeting. And foot traffic is already strong down here, where a lot of permanent dining options are. And so the benefit of added variety that would be brought by a food truck outside of a special event one-off time is limited. And then really the last item and why we didn't do it is few to no food trucks ask to be located downtown. The only requests we've had really have been for use of Harlem Avenue in really high visibility areas, and so we focused our efforts there. So hopefully that gets the question of these specific areas in which we were proposing this. So I'll go into this very briefly. We have a location A, let's call it. It's a stretch between Addison and Herrick. What you're seeing pictured here is a little blue house up at the top at 3200 South Harlem. The yellow line indicates the very specific area on Harlem Avenue, and then inside, maybe this does work now. No. The little other dot in the parking lot of that property is essentially a single parking space in that lot that would accomplish a distance of 75 feet minimum from nearby residences. I will tell you exactly how we measure these in a moment. And then the line on the street would be at least 150 feet from the current nearest existing restaurant. So Lucio had expressed earlier about Cubanito Express's concern about a food truck parking in the area, either around the block, on the block. That yellow area would be a minimum of 150 feet from that existing restaurant. There is a new food truck operator with a chicken menu that they've indicated they'd like to park kind of at the north side between the two distances, and should we regulate any specific area, they would have to relocate to an appropriately kind of zoned area. As I said, I would talk about how we measure. What we would do is we'd do a straight line measurement for simplicity and consistency, and I will explain how. For a brick and mortar restaurant, so let's say we'll use Cubanito Express because this is up here. They would have to be located at least 150 feet away if parked on the street. Okay, so anywhere 150 feet or different, south, north, either way. They could not go into Herrick Road or Addison. That would end up being a residential area. They can't park in that area. And then it would be for the entrance of, so the restaurant's entrance to the closest edge of the parking space. So if they're parked at the very bottom of that yellow line and where Emily's showing, it would have to be at least 150 feet from the restaurant's door.
I may be wrong, but I don't recall us discussing that we were okay with trucks parking on Harlem Avenue.
If street parking is undesirable, then we certainly can prevent that and focus just on the private lots.
I mean, I had my office over there in south of Herrick, but I recall all of Harlem Avenue having a parking issue, just like you expressed that we had in our downtown district. I don't see how we're going to allow trucks to park there and take up parking that is essential to the growth of those businesses there. If it was on private property, that'd be one thing, but on public where the taxpayers are only paying for those streets and the upkeep of that, I'm not in favor of that. I don't
Okay.
recall us
Let's,
discussing that before.
Let's pause there for just
Sure.
a second.
Yeah, go
Because if that's the consensus of the board, we can move on to the other topics. Is the board open to the idea of allowing on-street food trucks on Harlem or not?
Well, the question I had is, do we know what the parking restrictions are on Harlem? So is it 2 hours, 4 hours, anybody know? So it would be self-limiting?
2 hours. You said 2? Yeah, so Chief had said for volume, yes, the hours are restricted to 2 hours. The only truck that has indicated an interest in doing this has expressed that they'd be here about once a week. Things always change. And so if we're not interested in street parking and we would prefer to have them locate on a private property with an agreement, we certainly could require that.
That would be the direction I'd be in favor.
Trustee Evans?
So, parking there would just only be allowed if there's actually spots at the time that they come? It's not like
Correct.
they reserve spots?
No, there would be no spot reservation, so it would really be a first come, first serve parking there. So it's limited in desirability for sure.
It's challenging, I can tell you that from experience.
I guess I don't like the fact that we're talking about like the central business district and saying we don't want to give up parking there. Like, it seems like we're treating the two business districts differently, saying it's okay that we're going to take spaces away for food trucks on Harlem in this business district, but we would not do that in the central business district. That doesn't seem equitable to me to even, if we're not going to do it in one, we shouldn't do it in the other. It doesn't seem like it would be equitable to do.
Another thought on that is that it's not easy to park, to go to, like, even Cubanito, all the time, so
Yeah.
even if it's 150 feet away, it still kind of interferes with the other businesses.
Do we have the ability to prevent them from parking on a public street?
Council?
Yes, we do.
On Harlem?
Yes.
So
Maybe not parking, but operating the business,
Yeah,
yes.
Right.
Correct, operating a food truck business. We can regulate the location, be it on public streets or elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a consensus of the board one way or another? I personally agree with Trustee Gallegos that allowing the food truck to take away parking spaces for the existing businesses, whether it's downtown or on Harlem, doesn't seem fair or equitable to me.
I agree, and also, there needs to be a community payoff. It can't just be the village making accommodations for the food truck if there's no payoff for the residents or the community. There has to be, like, some give and take there. So it would be actually less convenient for the residents because they won't be able to find a place to park to
Right.
go to a business.
Yeah, not only would they take up spaces, but they'd attract people in cars that would be taking up those spaces, additional spaces, yeah.
Great.
I am not in favor. I'm in favor with Trustee Gallegos.
Is that a consensus?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Good,
We
okay,
can
we will
pass over
eliminate
that.
street parking. Thank you. Okay, so this is an example then of one of the private parking lots, and it shows what we're attempting to show. So if there is a food truck that would park in a private parking lot, there are 10 all along, but essentially in the B1C district and the B1 TOD. It would not transition into the corridor on Burlington. That's the only stretch of the commercial district that we wouldn't have this. It would be 100 feet as a minimum from another business. If there were to be fewer than 100 feet between the parking of a food truck and an existing brick and mortar business, it would require essentially permission if it was waived by that property owner, right? If they said, I'm prioritizing, they're sharing this equally and we're all okay with them parking here in this certain distance, we could receive and allow kind of movement. That's what's shown by the blue boxes. There is someone with interest in operating in the Starbuds lot. The only spaces that would be eligible for parking a food truck under these regulations would be that orange mark where Emily's highlighting. So that's 100 feet minimum from the current Ijano restaurant, and it's 75 feet from a house as well. So a residential home. We would measure from the residential, the edge of the parking space to the closest corner of the structure. So that would maintain a distance.
How did you come up with 25 feet from a residential structure?
75 feet is typical, and this is an example of one of the closest examples that we could find in a private lot plus the residence. So it's kind of the tightest area that would accommodate. It's a round number and also accommodates.
And this is not for special event stuff. This is on an everyday, regular basis that you're looking at. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we could also maintain that if there were to be a private property that wants to hold a special event on their lot, that we have we can adhere to a specific location. We could allow these parameters for their food truck and continue with the special event application, but this would be a recommended parking.
Okay.
I think this
Okay,
is-
so just a question, because
Yeah.
Starbucks had a food truck there, I can't remember when. It could have been last week, it
Recent.
could have been last month. I
Yeah.
honestly cannot remember when I saw it. But they had it basically where that red car is and the car is turning into park. So it would not be allowed, so no, right in front, right next to the store.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
Over
They had it
there.
right there.
Yeah.
So that would not be allowed.
That would be,
It would be farther from
right.
Asiano, but is it within 75 feet of a house then?
That would be the minimum away from that. I think it's probably a little bit too close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those might be handicap spots too, by the way, right?
They are, so it wouldn't be able to park in the accessible parking spaces. If
Okay.
that's what's there, then they shouldn't be doing that.
Got it.
So, essentially, that's what we're looking at. We are, again, it would be that proposed, if we're looking at only lots, right now we've said 100 feet. If that's not sufficiently distant enough from our existing restaurants and the board wants to evaluate a larger separation distance, we certainly can. Right now, as I've said, we have 2 that have gone through a licensing process. We will have to work with the one and see where on private property they could come to an agreement and locate if they choose to continue doing business here. We have one other that has expressed interest, it's probably the one that had been there recently, expressed interest in getting a license so they wouldn't have to do a special event application every time they wanted to come. But we could recommend specific parking areas if we keep to these requirements, the 100-foot distance from restaurants, front doors, and then 75 feet from nearby residences in those private lots.
I'm good with that, if that's what you're asking for, President Pollock, consensus
Yes.
on this one? Okay.
Do you repeat it?
Sure. So, like I said, this is a best example. We certainly have the others if we need them in the packet that show the other lots. But essentially, it's 100 feet from the door to the parking space of the food truck, if it's in a lot, and then 75 feet from the edge of that parking space to the closest corner of a residence.
There's a person in public.
Works for me.
Do you have more?
No, just
Oh.
if there are questions to answer, I'm certain that, we may have a response. Oh, the only other comment I'll make is that Alfaro too did provide some comments for the board. I sent those earlier to inform everyone of their concern, and it really was based on the proximity and distance, and as we've noted, there's not an ability to regulate on type of cuisine, but that is what they were asking for. Yeah.
Is the, is the parking lot at our marts, there's 100 feet on each side?
We might be able to switch to
Do they
that.
have the same buffer that would be required?
It would be, so they would be able to, based on where they are now, they would be able to remain there. I will note, though, that if we find that there is a time when any of these businesses are not following our rules, we have ways to manage it. We would want to require a license specifically because of the ability to regulate someone who is mobile and is going to these specific places. There's got to be something that they give and not just the village giving to them. We certainly could have the health inspector stop them from operating if need be, if they're not passing inspection, they don't have the appropriate resources, whatever the case is, we can certainly do that. We can provide notice, we can write tickets, we can notice them that they're going to have a suspension or revocation of their business license through due process. So we would do that if they're operating in violation of any one of our ordinances. If there are activities that are adverse to the village or serving unsafe food, we've had multiple findings. All of those things can be a reason for providing notice for suspension or revocation. If they're false or fraudulent, they're not paying their taxes to the village or to the state or whatever it might be, or failure to renew other requirements, we can not allow them to do business here. We want to be supportive of our entrepreneurs, obviously, and offer the village residents a service if we want food trucks, but we also have these levers that we can pull if we're finding that they're not behaving.
And one more question. So inside the village, like the central business district and around there, they would have to complete a special permit form? And on the edges, they don't?
They can't operate in a residential district unless a resident is
private
creating
business.
something, or a organization is holding a special event, a church or whoever can certainly use that. In the central business district, yes, they would operate with a special event permit.
And then is there a reason why we decided not to do that along Harlem?
We can. I mean,
Well, I just wonder if we're just going to let them be there every day forever. I wonder, we did get some feedback that it's a bit much for the other.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some
the duration.
fairness and equity issues. So I don't know if we want to talk about like limiting the number of times they can be parked in.
Well, I think we had that discussion before, and the consensus of the board was that special events are one thing, but that we would consider allowing I'll call it a permanent food truck parked who's just subject to regular business hour restrictions. It's basically another business that's located in a food truck. And under the recommendations proposed, they would only be allowed in private parking lots and subject to the 75-foot and 100-foot separation requirements. If you want to add a limited number of days or times or whatever, then we get back to the special events. And I mean, you can certainly just approve it strictly as a special event. And how many times can you have a special event? Aren't there restrictions on that?
Do we have it?
I don't
I think
believe
it's
so.
case by case.
Okay.
So,
But you could put those restrictions on there. But I think, based on the, we heard testimony from R Marts, who does it on a pretty regular basis, and they made some compelling arguments as to why they should be allowed to continue doing it. Yeah, that's one of the considerations is, do you want to allow food trucks as a regular business enterprise in the village?
I think their argument was that it brings in customers to
Right.
purchase their gas, but then the other businesses argue that it's taking customers away from them.
But as we said before, we're not here to regulate where customers buy their food. I don't think that saying that we're limiting it's a touchy, we get into a touchy area when we start talking about regulating the marketplace like that.
Yeah, I would say it's more consumer-driven. If they have a certain demand that they have to meet, they're meeting their customer needs, and that's how they base their hours on.
The other difference is it's private property too.
Right.
They're utilizing their own, utilizing their own property to, like, for example, if they were to build a shack as opposed to having a food truck, there's not really a regulation on that
That'd be
because it's their
preferable.
property.
And
Right,
the
as long as
shack
they
would
do
be
it.
a permanent, shack would be permanent though, at least.
But that's what I mean, like, they could do that as well, because it's private property. I mean, it would be subject to zoning and stuff, but
and the only reason that we would want to continue to license those that are performing this type of food service on private property is simply for the fact that it is open to the public, and we would have a public interest in monitoring the safety and health of that unit.
We would be
Just
the
like we
regulator.
would for any restaurant that's operating in town, we inspect and have certain expectations for insurance and other health and safety protocol that these food trucks would also be held to.
We would be the authority for the regulations, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Have we talked about, or have you, the village, have his staff talked about how they'll address the parking issues that have come up with in the current situation, like with blocking the parking lot at Alfaro and
Yeah,
that can't keep happening.
they conveyed that there were parking issues, but they also had told me they're trying to be kind neighbors, and so they're hesitant to call for tow trucks or post signage in order to say you shouldn't park here if you're not a customer. And so it's partially a choice from a private property's use to say, we don't want you parking here, and to either call for assistance or call for towing or whatever the case may be. And so that's the advice that I had provided to them when I talked to them yesterday. But outside of that, they have ability to have measures that they can take, and if they're not taking them, then there's.
That's their choice, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
private sector
Yeah.
issue.
Any other questions for staff at this time?
Step aside if there's.
Are we taking public comment?
Yes, we'll do that, but I want to make sure that you have opportunity to ask any questions of staff first. No more questions? At this time, I'd ask for public comments. Please don't be repetitive. We've heard a lot of your concerns, but if you want to just briefly restate your concerns or bring up new issues, please proceed. Please identify yourself.
I will ask if I can get translate. She can translate for me.
Sure.
Just, well, my name is Lucio. I'm from Coronado. My main concern is why we want food trucks on Harlem and Manhattan and Riverside, the center.
Que por qué no en el centro? That why only food trucks on Harlem but not in the downtown of Riverside?
I think the explanation the staff had provided was that there really, with the separation requirements we're talking about, there's no place for them in downtown.
Que con los requerimientos de separación no hay zonas para ponerlos ahí.
They're only allowed on private property,
Solamente en zonas privadas.
not on the street.
Y si que,
So, adentro de Riverside solamente lo permiten en residencias privadas, no en propiedad pública.
¿Y qué beneficio tiene? Yo veo que la ciudad quiere acomodarlos a ellos. ¿Qué beneficio tiene la ciudad para estar haciendo todo ellos que quieren ser permanentes?
He's saying what benefits the village if these food trucks, that you guys are accommodating them, so what benefit does the village have to do all the accommodations for these food trucks?
Let's do this. Go ahead and ask your questions. I'll write them down, then we'll answer your questions when you're done.
¿Qué otra pregunta? Se
¿Cómo?
le va a escribir todas las preguntas y entonces le va a dar la contestación al último.
Sí, porque es muy complicado cómo van a regular todo eso, ¿no? También.
He says that it seems very complicated as to how you guys are going to regulate
Y el estacionamiento también,
parking.
de todo. Bueno, si ellos quieren ser permanentes, ¿por qué los dueños de los food trucks no buscan un lugar donde estén permanentes?
That if the food trucks are trying to be here more permanently, then why don't they look for a place to be able to do that? But that the village shouldn't allow that.
I mean, I'm trying to open a second location next door, and I've been trying to save money to open it and invest here. I can leave. They can buy my business if they want. Pueden comprar mi negocio si quieren.
Did you guys understand what he was saying?
Yes, I also want to know, did he understand what we were talking about the entire time, since there is a language barrier?
Que si usted entendió todo lo que estaba diciendo.
Sí, pero si el food truck quiere estar aquí permanente, pues pueden comprar mi negocio.
He's saying that yes, he did, but that if a food truck is trying to be here permanently, that they could buy his business and then be here permanently.
Because it's not fair for me. I'm working here for 3 or 4 years and trying to stay in Riverside, and then have a food truck next, like 100 feet. I understand it's 100 feet, but it's not. I think it's not fair for local businesses.
Did he understand that we're not in favor of allowing it on Harlem Avenue, parked on?
Sí, no, acaban de decir que ellos no están en favor de eso.
Also, but if you want to keep them on special events, I'm okay with that, but not permanently 5 days, 6 days a week.
Well, permanently, it will
Okay.
not be allowed on Harlem Avenue.
No,
Thank
no
you.
lo van a permitir.
Trustee Gaggles, let's let him finish his comments, and then we'll address it. Were you finished? I didn't mean to
Yeah,
cut you
he's
off. Okay. Anyone else would like to comment on this? Seeing none, so you asked a couple of questions. One was, what is the benefit to the village? The direct benefit from a food truck to the village is we collect sales taxes, just like we do any other food business in the village. Plus, it provides it attracts people to our village, and that's good for business. And I think that was the main question that you had asked. So, trustees, I guess no more questions for staff. You've heard from the public. I think what we've heard so far is that we will not allow on-street food trucks on Harlem Avenue. We will not allow food trucks in downtown except for special events. And that's based on the fact that there really isn't a place for them other than the street. And then, so the question
President Pollock,
is,
can I just ask a question? There really isn't a spot, nobody has a parking lot in downtown that would meet the requirements? Nobody has private property that could do that?
We could reduce the parking location if we choose. So if we choose to, I think there's only 3 parking lots that would even be within the vicinity of downtown that would be
Okay.
large enough. So if you're looking at the Masonic Lodge,
Okay. But that's
they-
fairly residential.
Right, it's right
Okay.
there. We have probably a portion of church parking lot.
Okay.
That's residential too, so let's just talk about
Residential.
non-residential.
We may have like Jeff's Auto, which again, cutting it a little bit close, if they were to park right at the front of the lot there. Riverside Foods, and again, you'd have to almost park smack dab in the middle of it. I don't know how desirable it is. So it's not.
So we're not necessarily saying that it can't be in downtown, it's just that there's no place in downtown that would meet the requirements that
it's-
we're outlining.
Correct. Correct. So we also, and I understand this concern about the capacity for more growth and more restaurants when brick and mortar can establish. I'll clarify for Lucio that if he were to open his second location in that same location, the same principles would apply. So that new distance requirement would essentially spread and extend the area that they would be, prevented from parking in, because that location then would extend that border area around there. When you look at the occupancies that are available in downtown and along Harlem and along Ogden, I counted 9 total for the whole village. We're very, very happily, occupied in this community, whether they're, robustly used or not. The vacancies are limited. So there's 2 downtown that I know of, only 1 on a ground floor area, 1 on Ogden, and 6 on Harlem. And so when you're looking at the potential for opportunity of a new vibrancy of a business, if there's something else that draws people to the area, it also could act as a generator of just interest, So and again, if there were to be someone who opens in one of those 6 vacancies on Harlem, then again, it just adds to the investment in the community, and it stretches the ability for food trucks to maybe not participate as much. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have direction, and we'll come back with a new update.
Is there any other questions or direction to be provided at this time?
Well, I'll just say one more thing. I'm sorry, were you gonna say something? I'm not in favor of unlimited food trucks on private property. So I don't know if that's gonna make a difference on this board, but I would even be, I think it would even be fine if we did like a limit of 100 times a year special event permit. So that'd be twice a week. But I'm not in favor of unlimited times. It's not really, I don't think it's fair to the other businesses, and I'm not sure it's good policy, but we don't really have anything to compare it to, so.
Can I ask for a consensus just on that particular issue, on whether or not business license food truck, as we've referred to it, not the special event one, but do you want to limit the number of days that a permanent, regular licensed food truck can operate?
I still would not be in favor of that. That's consumer-driven, supply and demand. We're not here to tell a business how they should operate in all reality. What hours they should have, how many days a week, I mean, that's...
Yeah. I'm sorry, Trustee Fitzgerald, you were going to weigh in before Trustee Evans, and I meant to come back to you. Did you have?
I think we're all on the same page with some of this, and I like the way you frame this out with delivery versus cuisine, right? And I think that's where we're looking at it. I wasn't part of the past conversations on this, but at this point, I'm comfortable with the boundaries. It's a starting point that's going on. I am not in favor of permanency. I'm more in favor of special events. My reasoning for that is, from my experience, food trucks seem to be a little homogenous, and what the spirit of it was to get a little more rotation of variety of food trucks, kind of like it is in Chicago or Wicker Park. That's kind of the spirit of it. But again, from experience, I think that the private property element just leads to a really slippery slope as to who has final say and the operators, and where do we fall into try to refereeing those battles along the way when it comes to it. It's moving in the right direction. I think that just need to iron a couple things out, but that's just my perspective.
Others?
I actually see merit to that perspective and to what Trustee Evans' point was. I think if we are talking about vibrancy, that does connote some, mixing it up a little bit. And I don't know how to accomplish that with the framework that's presented here. I know we have an existing arrangement with Armourts that is, causing some measure of distress to a neighboring restaurant, without getting into the weeds on the merits of the, remedies for that situation. I think if we can, maybe the answer is to, have a special events application for all of the food trucks on Harlem and that B1 business district as well.
Anyone else? So it sounds like we want to consider, rather than just completely open-ended, at least those who, of those who spoke up, it seems like there's direction to say that even food trucks on private parking lots, such as what our Marts has done in the past, should have a limit on the number of days they are allowed to operate. So I think I would ask that staff consider our discussions here tonight and bring something back to us at a later meeting. Is there any other input you want to give to staff at this point? Trustee Cause?
I would not want to, I think when we're talking about on private property, I think Trustee Callaghan was saying about it's private property and it should be driven by, what do people want? How often do they want it there? I don't like the idea of telling businesses what they can and can't do on their own property. I like the idea of putting restrictions on it from the standpoint of how close it can be to other established businesses and stuff, but I don't like the idea of telling a business what they can do on their property to help improve and drive business to their own store, which is that was the discussion that started this, was what was happening on our Marts, and that was how he was driving more business to his business. And I guess I would not be in favor of it just being special events.
I want to think about it some more.
Okay.
So a question for Trustee Evans.
Reasonable.
Would 5 days a week but different vendors be more acceptable, or are you just thinking 5 days a week is too much for the other restaurants?
I guess, I think with different vendors, maybe we could, I don't know, that's a good question. If it's the same vendor, I would encourage them to open a bricks and mortar, or if they want to be here every day. It discourages them from taking the extra step. So that's a good question.
Well, just that I'm not sure that that's actually the case. I mean, we're trying to have the incubator spots here at the train station, and now they're doing that in the private sector. So I kind of think that it's encouraging them to find their following. And the business owner who was here about a month ago, he did say he was looking for a permanent space. So that is happening in the private sector without government interference. I mean, that's laissez faire. That's free market enterprise.
Well, staff will take all these comments and we'll have further discussion.
We will.
Anything that
future
we make
meeting.
a change to, the board can obviously determine when it would take effect. The business licenses that have been issued are through the year, but we can, modify generally. And then there may be additional good conversations we'll have in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business discussion relating to electric aggregation renewal. Clerk Stenzel.
So this is a preliminary discussion prior to the June 5th meeting where the board would need to make a decision regarding our electric aggregation program. A little bit of background, in 2012, Riverside residents approved a referendum authorizing the village to operate an opt-out municipal aggregation program for residents and small businesses. This program allows the village to aggregate the electrical load for all residents and negotiate a fixed rate. Since 2012, the village has gone out to bid several times. In the recent years, the village board has only selected bids offering 100% green aggregation, meaning that the supplier offsets the village's energy consumption by purchasing renewable energy certificates for all ratepayers in the aggregation program. This decision has resulted in the village significantly reducing its CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions. The village currently ranks number 2 on the Environmental Protection Agency's Green Power Communities list. However, this summer, the EPA is going to be sunsetting that program, and they're no longer going to be ranking those communities. Last June, the village board approved a 12-month, 100% green aggregation contract with MC Squared Energy Services at a rate of 8.09 cents per kilowatt hour. This was the least expensive 100% green energy option. Of our eligible residents and small businesses, 12% have opted out of the program, meaning we have 88% participation. The current agreement with MC Squared Energy Services expires in October of 2025. So the board has 2 options for consideration. Within those 2 options, there's a few different choices that you can make for them. So for option 1, the village can continue with the fixed rate program. If you're looking here on our charts, option 1 is going to be this first box we have up here. One of the things we did not include on here was the 0% green energy. So the reason why is that it's still at a premium to ComEd, but we have none of the benefits of green energy, so it's not recommended. For a 12-month term, that traditional energy would be 10.50 cents, which is 1 cent above that ComEd, which is why we don't recommend it. For 50% green energy, we're looking at 10.65 cents per kilowatt hour, which is 1.15 cents above ComEd. And then for 100%, still at that 12-month term, we have 10.8 cents, and that's 1.3 cents above ComEd. Just a note with these are estimates. We'll have our actual rates at that June 5th meeting. So if the board would choose to go with option 1, we'd receive those bids and from suppliers to renew the aggregation program. We'd present them to you at the June 5th meeting. Option number 2 we're looking at down here is the ComEd price match. So this would be all participating residents and small businesses would be guaranteed to never pay above the ComEd rate. The village could choose to continue green energy with this program, but it would be a lower percentage of 20% green energy. That being said, that 20% is all Midwest generated. The other program would be the Civic Grant for Unrestricted Use. So this would be for a 12-month term, it would be $15,000 annually. For this, it would enable funds to be used for any local green initiatives. So one of the things we talked about tonight was that Riverside Road to 2050 Climate Action Resilience Plan. We could use that to help fund some of those initiatives and move us closer to that 2050. Here tonight, we have Sharon Durling. She is the president and CEO of Illinois Aggregation Consultants. She can help go over more, answer any questions. Durling and IAC has served as a village aggregation consultant, and they've shown their dedication and support through the years, and most recently with the Riverside 150 sponsorship. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Clerk Stenzel.
She's presented that very well, and I just have a few comments to add. Let me be clear, I don't have favor one over the other, so what I point out is just for clarification, not I'm trying to sway your decision-making one way or the other. But a couple of things. Your current program at 8.09 cents per kilowatt hour compares with today's ComEd rate of 6.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So underwater, started, what did I say, June 15. In 15 days, that's going to flip. You'll be paying still the 8.09 cents per kilowatt hour. The ComEd rate is projected to, we don't have the final yet, but to go to 9.5 cents. So you're looking green literally in the money, as well as, green energy. That was a bad pun, so I'm not going to say that. But let me just say, I took averages, what you typically consume in previous years, and extrapolated that this has been an overage premium, including what you'll, burn a lot of air conditioning. I'm not recommending it. Burn a lot of air conditioning this summer. It tends to go up. Residents will be saving money on their summer bills, but they have overpaid for the previous 7 months or so. So the average homeowner or small resident will have overpaid about $83 in premium that was kind of decided at the last meeting. So just want to be clear about that.
That's over a 1-year period?
Over a 1-year period, cumulative. And it was an opt-out program, so we surely wouldn't say the word tax, so I won't say that word, but it's a premium, and it was a choice. But I'd also like to be real clear about that, bring up the word transparency. When opt-out notices are mailed and the village reviews them and they go out under the village's letterhead, we are disallowed by regulation to state the ComEd rate. Wouldn't it be nice if we could say the ComEd rate is 9.5 cents, here's our program at, let's say, 10.5 or whatever, 10.80, and it's 100% green. And then it's a little clear choice for residents. So just a concern I wanted to bring up. We're not allowed to say what the ComEd rate is. We can point you to a website on the hard copy paper that you got in the mail. So just to be clear, in the past, residents saved a lot of money, and they might just assume, oh, I'm going to be saving money on this. But if we went out in the, downtown and asked 50 people, I don't think one of them could tell me what the ComEd supply rate is today. So it's not known or kind of easily findable. I just wanted to make that clear as a thought for you. Should you choose 10.8 cents per kilowatt hour, 100% green energy, and you can do that, maybe could do a little bit work on clarifying through communication. I think the opt-out rate might increase, but that is what it is. It's not my goal or maybe yours to have a low opt-out rate. By the way, we were a little bit surprised that the opt-out rate was only 12%. It was 6% in your previous. You had a ComEd price match program from the year 2020 to 2023 for 3 years. So we've done this before here. Only 6% opted out. This time 12%. And if we could make that, it's my opinion, it'd be kind of important to sort of let people know what the ComEd rate is, particularly if you're offering a premium over that. And then that's their choice. One other comment I'd like to make, that 100% green, that's great. But as Emily read very carefully, 88% of eligible, and she said that word, participants were enrolled. But that's not all, because some have chosen another contract, so they're not eligible, they have another supplier. So in actuality, about today, 72% of residents and small business owners are enrolled in your 100% program. I'm kind of running ahead here. If you should choose a ComEd price match program wherein no one would ever pay a cent more than ComEd ever guaranteed, and the best offer that we can get, sadly, is 20% renewable energy credits. That 20% would actually cover all, I think there's about 3,900 of what we have small business owners and resident accounts. Additionally, large commercial, like the woman here, what was her restaurant? La Estancia. That would be, I'm sure, I know she's medium commercial size electricity. So that 20% would even cover her. So we can't really say, we would be at 100%, dropping to a 20%. The real numbers would be 70% of the communities at 100% and probably about 25% if you drop to this program that's ComEd price match. So instead of 100 to 20, it's kind of like Emily and I talked about this on Zoom. It's really like 72 to 25, less of a drop. But I'm not suggesting that you do take the ComEd price match. I'm just wanting to be clear about what we're looking at. And I've said a lot, so I'll stop for a minute.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience waiting for us tonight.
Oh, no problem. I think I'm waiting out the storm, so thank you for, I'm not going to have a tornado on me, so no worries. But happy to respond to questions, or I said a mouthful of that to clarify. I did, I don't think this might be in your notes, the 10.8 cents per kilowatt hour for a 1-year term. That's your best offering for 100% green energy, would probably come out to about $10 per month premium per average household. So right now it's been an overage of $83 and it would bump it up to $120. But the ComEd rate moves around, so I can't, in fact, we didn't expect the ComEd rate to pop up. I won't go into that, but it's jumping from 6.5 to 9.5. It was I don't have a glass ball. So that actually benefits you now, so we can leave this meeting saying you're saving money on your ComEd bill that you're going to get in June. So yay for that.
Thank you. I imagine the trustees have the similar thoughts as I do, which is until we actually see the real numbers next board meeting, it's hard to make a decision.
Well, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, the purpose of this, of bringing this to you tonight, is just to get you thinking about it, be better prepared than we have in the past when we do have to make a decision, because the nature of this thing is we get the prices in the afternoon, and that night we've got to decide, right?
Correct.
And so this kind of gives you a heads up and a chance to think about it and asking questions. So did you have something you wanted to add, Sharon?
Well, I do have a crystal ball about some things I'd like to claim. Those numbers are going to vary very little. So you can kind of assume that's now. It's not as volatile as we've seen the stock market of late, but those numbers are probably going to be right about there. So that's probably what you're looking at. I don't expect surprises. But you're right, we'll get something.
We're probably going to be comparing for 100% green energy, the 10.8 or 10.9 versus the 9.5 of ComEd.
Yes.
But we'll know for sure at our next board meeting. So
That's correct.
any questions, discussion?
Sharon, I just have a quick question. If for some reason ComEd decides to go to 12 cents, we're still locked in at 10.8, correct?
Yes, and ComEd, well, my crystal ball tells me about that. ComEd has preliminarily announced the rate for the next 12 months, and the energy year starts June 1st. So they've kind of locked in June 1st this year till May 31 of next year.
Okay.
It's going to be 9.5. But I will tell you, by June 5, that's their preliminary 9.5. I think it's going to drop to 9.3 or 9.2. I will have that hard final number next week, and it won't be a shock. Although we just had the shock this year, but the energy year ends May 31 and your contract goes through the summer. So it'll be a little surprise next summer.
Okay.
I have two questions. Option 2, the annual civic contribution, that comes from
the supplier.
NC Squared, and they're getting, so what restrictions are there on how that money can be spent?
No restrictions. None.
Why don't I believe you? Really?
Well, I can tell you some other communities have done. Some just put in the general fund. Some have, well, they're, instead of putting monies towards renewable energy certificates, they're giving that to the village. Some have told me they've used for recyclable bins. They have little projects and they just don't have the money for them. So one small village did that, another lighting for a bicycle path. I told you a few other things, and maybe you looked into some of our neighboring communities that do it.
Oak Park is using it for their climate action and resilience plan, and that was what I said. They call it their community aggregation, but that's what they're using this program for.
Yeah, they take the funds now instead of renewable energy.
Manager Francis. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do I remember last year you said, you commented on how many communities have dropped out of the aggregation program? Are we still one of the few?
No, I would say I have one community this year that has decided to expire at the end of this year, but I've had 2 new that have restarted. So I think we've had more adds than subtractions. People appreciate having funds. And one thing they really like is just the stability, the simplicity for residents, rather than the ComEd rate, or you know, the simplicity of the people that call and try to sign them up and solicitations. It kind of takes care of it for them. A lot of people really trust their communities. Your 12% opt-out rate at that higher rate, I think it was a really high level of trust for leadership, because we've seen some much higher opt-out rates in communities where there's maybe a little more mistrust, but I won't say that either.
I do have one question. You mentioned that in the opt-out letter that goes to residents or all electrical customers, we can't say what the ComEd rate is, correct?
We're disallowed, correct.
Disallowed.
Regulation.
Can we state that by other means, like a
Yes.
social media post?
All
or-
day long, yes.
We can, you can.
Well, actually, kind of you can't, because the village is setting, it's a legal notice. So in that legal
Yeah.
notice, there's certain things that has to be said, and it's very
So
specific
the village,
language.
concurrent or before that opt-out letter goes out, we could use our communication, all of our communications.
All day long, and I could help with that in some social media posts to be clear about it.
Because I think that what I hear from the community a lot is, if this could only be an opt-in, it should be an opt-in. Well, that's not allowed by state law.
Yeah.
But if a consideration when we decide this in 2 weeks is a more aggressive campaign to let people know how to opt out.
The participation may or may not drop. I can't speak for decisions, but people have clear information, and information is great.
I like to think this community would understand the benefits of sustainable energy and all that.
Maybe the opt-out rate would decline. Let's hope for that.
But in fairness, I mean, people should it should be made as easy as possible for people to make a choice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
Thank you.
So we'll be better prepared in 2 weeks and
I'll see you
ready
at
to make a
6:30.
decision. Yes, 6:30, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is an ordinance granting consolidation approval for 28 and 30 East Burlington Street. Assistant Manager Monroe.
Thank you. On April 23rd, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved 6-0 a consolidation of 4 lots at 28 and 30 East Burlington. This is part of the planned unit development that was approved by the board in January. And so this is just a consolidation of the parcels that would make up that unit. So with approval, it would approve Planning and Zoning's recommendation. Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
We need a motion on this, it's an actual vote.
Yes, this is an ordinance, so we would need a motion and a
I will
second.
make said motion. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Clerk Stenzel.
Trustee Collis.
Aye.
Trustee Marshawska.
Aye.
Trustee Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Ordinance approved. C, a resolution amending the Village of Riverside Employee Manual, Section 3.12, relative to sick leave and the village retirement health savings plan for non-union employees. Management analyst split.
Good evening, President Pollock, Village Trustees, and Village Manager Francis. The Village of Riverside currently offers its retiring employees 2 options with regard to its sick leave balance, at the time of their exit. The first would be to convert half of their sick leave balance as a credit, a service credit for their respective pension, if allowed. And the other option would be to receive half of the cash value of this sick leave balance on their final paycheck. One thing we have noticed is that this payment can result in a high tax liability for both the employee that is exiting as well as the Village of Riverside, namely FICA and income tax. The proposed updates to both our RHS plan and the employee manual would allow for non-union employees the sick buyout to, rather than be a direct payment to that employee, instead would be a deposit into their retirement health savings account or RHS account. This would be able to be done pre-tax, which would lower income tax FICA liabilities for both us as well as the retiring employee. And the RHS plan itself is funds that that retiree could use towards medical expenses. This is determined by the IRS and is fairly broad, but is up to their discretion and does include health insurance premiums. We believe that this change would improve our sick leave benefit that we offer to our employees and save both the retiree and the village itself money. If you have any questions at this point, I'm happy to answer them.
I like this a lot. I've always loved our marital savings account since it came out 25 years ago.
Can you speak up, please?
Oh, I'm so
All
sorry.
of you,
You're
all
right
of you,
next to me.
actually. I can't hear anything with the fan running. Could you repeat that, please?
No, I'm hugely in favor of this. I was always in favor of health savings accounts ever since they came out 25 years ago or so. Known as the Archer Medical Savings Plan. But, so
Any questions or additional comments?
this is also going to need a motion then?
Yes.
Then I'll make said motion.
Motion, do I have a second? Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? No public for comments? Clerk Stenzel.
Trustee Cost? Aye. Trustee Marshallska? Aye. Trustee Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Trustee Gallagher?
Aye.
Trustee Mateo?
Aye.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion is, ordinance is approved. Discussion regarding parking prohibitions on Blooming Bank Road and time restrictions for commuter lots. Manager Francis.
Thank you. The purpose for this being on the agenda is the board had received an inquiry from an individual that parks along Blooming Bank Road. Typically, however, due to the current train that they take, on-street parking is not permitted until 6 a.m. And their train, I believe, if I recall correctly, was approximately 5:25 a.m. And so that would preclude them from being able to park in the metered spots along Blooming Bank. However, there are alternatives within our commuter lot 1, which is also a 24-hour lot. There is parking that is metered behind the swim club parking lot, and so there is that alternative as an option. However, in speaking with Director Buckley and Director Tabb about what would be the implications if the board had elected to modify parking restrictions along the metered parking for Blooming Bank Road. Director Buckley said it would not be an issue, and Director Tabb, the only item he noted was, it would be something they'd have to navigate around if there was snow removal operations. However, it wasn't something that was insurmountable, and they could work around that. However, if the board were looking at changing all on-street parking and allowing it to begin at 5 a.m., that would be a different discussion. And so with that, I wanted to get the board's feedback. If the board would like to change the parking restrictions related to Blooming Bank Road, staff would then work on an ordinance to modify that, but then circling back if there's any other parking restrictions as it relates to commuter parking in general. Right now, commuter parking is from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So those that purchase the commuter permit, that's their time frame that is permitted. And that is in Lot 1 and also Lot 8 that is behind the arcade building and the different properties along Quincy. It's behind those along the BNSF line. And so those would be the implications of those particular properties. And so I just or those spots rather. And so I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention if we were looking at making modifications, not only to certain metered spots, but whether or not we wanted to address anything relative to commuter spots, given that the permits begin at 6 a.m., not 5 a.m.
Okay, so currently, we have no overnight parking, 2 o'clock to 6 a.m. on all streets.
On all streets.
How did we get to that? Do you have any history on how long that's been in effect? Well, but you had to have your parking lots on. and that makes
Before
sense
I
in
was
the 90s.
here, so I know that way back in the day, Riverside used to require that if people were parked on the street, that they had to have their headlights on.
Mhm.
Once again, this.
Parking lights.
Parking lights.
They
Not headlights,
Okay.
parking lights.
Okay.
There's a
Once again,
difference.
this predates me.
Till the
And so
90s, yeah.
why those restrictions came into play, unclear. Obviously, for snow removal operations, when you're looking at public works, you want the streets clear for a window of time so that they can remove as much snow as humanly possible before, you have the different obstacles that you're gonna encounter with on-street parking.
And I can tell you that just about every suburb I've been affiliated with over the years, worked with, has an overnight parking prohibition. And generally speaking, I think that's based on public safety considerations. There's not a need for overnight parking generally. And generally, if there is a need, you can call the police and get an exception for 1 or 2 nights if you have a guest or whatever. And so therefore, it's good to clear the streets at night. And, so that's kind of the general history. I don't know, that's not the Riverside history necessarily, but.
In Riverside, it's very dark in the evenings, right? And so some streets, you won't see a vehicle that is parked on the street until you're right on it. And so then it becomes also additionally a safety concern, as President Pollock mentioned.
So I guess the staff is looking for direction on whether to change the permitted parking hours on Blooming Bank to begin at 5 a.m. instead of 6 a.m.?
For just the metered spots, correct?
The metered spots, right, for the commuters. Trustee Evans?
I think that the request is a result of the more modern workday schedule. People are starting earlier, and the Metro schedule has started to follow the trend, and so I think that it would be okay for us to also accommodate early workers by making the start time earlier.
I'm in agreement with.
Yeah. I mean, it's very sad to have to get on a train at 5:25. You might as well be able to park.
That trend has not reached me.
Just feel sad for them.
Manager Francis?
Do we want to change the start time then for the commuter permits from 6 a.m. to 5 a.m. as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Staff will come back with an ordinance. So the board does not have a need for an executive session this evening, so I would ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. We are adjourned.